Excuse me? Do we have a quorum? Okay, welcome everybody to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee of the Newton City Council. Present at the beginning of the meeting, I'm the chair, Rick Lipoff. We also have from the committee, Councilor Tariq Lucas here in the chamber. And on Zoom, we have Councilors Downs and Greenberg.
And Laredo.
Anybody else from the committee?
Kelly.
And Councilor Kelly, the vice chair, Andrea Kelly.
And Councilor Laredo.
Councilor Laredo is here now. Great.
Hey, I'm on time. It's exactly 7 o'clock. I don't want any grief about that.
Nice to see you. Nice that you're on time. We have also, we should have from the Law Department, Jonah Temple. And from Planning, we should have Kat Kemet and Michael Gleba.
I thought that was on at 8 o'clock.
Can you please mute? Everybody mute. You know how to mute everybody? Cassidy? Yep, you got everybody muted? Okay. And Lisa Sandoval, also from the Planning Department. And here comes Councilor Alicia Bowman as well. I think we have everybody now. Right? Okay. First item of the night is 130-23. Rostrum Nazar, Best Price Signs and Printing, request to allow a freestanding sign at 1010 Chestnut Street. Who is here to present?
Hi, I'm here to present Elisa Sandoval.
Go ahead.
Hold on, let me just share my screen. So this is petition number 13023, the special permit request for 1010 Chestnut Street to install a freestanding sign, replacing the existing freestanding sign. So this is all freestanding signs require special permits. So this is why this petitioner is asking for a special permit. The site is currently a gas station, which is changed ownership and management. So they are requesting to replace the sign that is there now. So when reviewing this request, the council should consider the proposed exceptions to the sign ordinance should be permitted and are appropriate due to the nature of the use of the premises, the architecture of the buildings or their locations with reference to the street is such that such exceptions are in the public interest. The specific site is an appropriate location for the proposed sign that requires waivers from the sign ordinance. The proposed sign that requires waivers from the sign ordinance will not adversely affect the neighborhood. The proposed sign will not be a nuisance or a serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. And access to the site or streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. So this is just showing the location of the site. It is located in a Business 1 zoning district adjacent to MR1 zoning districts at the intersection of Chestnut and Winter Streets in Upper Falls. It is very much a mixed commercial and residential neighborhood, and the property directly abuts multifamily residential buildings. So this is just depicting the existing conditions of the site. There is an existing mobile gas station freestanding sign towards the back of the site and away from the intersection. The site is accessed by two very wide driveways on Chestnut Street and Winter Street, with the sign located adjacent to Chestnut Street. We did look in the files and we did not see any permits that were given for the existing freestanding sign, but we did find that the sign is noted on a site plan that dates back to 1990. So the sign has been there for quite some time. So this is the site plan showing the existing sign or the freestanding sign would be located here, adjacent to the main building area. And just some details on the dimensions of the freestanding sign. It is proposed to be a 6 by 4 foot sign, 24 square foot area in total. It is a pylon sign with a digital gas price. At this point, planning doesn't have specific concerns regarding the proposed freestanding sign. It is set back from the intersection, is compatible with the commercial use on the site, and there has been a freestanding sign at the same location. This has had review by various, by the Urban Design Commission, and they approved the freestanding sign at their December 14th meeting. Engineering review isn't required, and neither is Newton Historical Commission review, although because it is located in a historic district, Upper Falls Historic District Commission review and approval of this project is required. We do recommend that is included as a condition of approval for the for this request, but you know, should the city council decide to approve this request, we recommend that be included. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions. And I know I believe the applicant is here as well.
Great, thank you very much. That is Planning Department's report. Is there somebody from the petitioner, the applicant who wishes to add anything before we go to the public?
No, technically, everything gonna be the same size, and the mobile sign, they have a two color, red and blue. We're gonna keep the same color, same size. Everything gonna be exactly the same size, the same location, same height. Nothing changed. Just the company name gonna change.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right. Is there anybody here in the chamber that wishes to speak from the public on this item? No? Okay. Anybody at home on Zoom from the public that wishes to speak on this item, raise your virtual hand. And I will call on you, Mr. Riley. State your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jerry Riley, and I live at 12 Spring Street in Upper Falls. I'm a neighbor. I live just sort of 2 houses away from the mobile station, and I have absolutely no objection to it, and I think that's fine.
Well, thank you very much. Anybody else from the public? We'll go to the committee. Councilor Downs.
When you're ready, Chair, I will move approval. This has been here, that sign has been there since I moved in, for sure. And I don't see any reason not to approve another sign going in that same spot.
Okay, thank you very much. I see nobody else. Councilor Downs technically has closed the public hearing. Made him close the public hearing. On the committee, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is closed. We have a motion to approve. Ms. Sandoval, can we take a look at a council order?
See here. So the findings, proposed findings are: 1, the proposed freestanding sign should be permitted and is appropriate due to the commercial nature of the use of the premises, and the sign's location set back from the intersection is such that such exceptions are in the public interest. 2, the site is an appropriate location for the proposed sign due to the site's commercial nature and its location on Chestnut Street. 3, the proposed sign will not adversely affect the neighborhood as the sign is well placed within the site and replaces an already existing sign. 4, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians as the sign does not interfere with the lines of sight of pedestrians and motorists. And 5, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. Next slide.
Yep.
So this would have the standard condition for plan referencing as well as a standard building permit condition, with the addition of that the applicant obtain all necessary approvals from the Upper Falls Historic District Commission.
Okay, great. We have a motion to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I think you have to take a roll call,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, because we're
that's right.
partially remote.
Yeah, that's true. We've been gone a few weeks, haven't we? I forget these things. Roll call, please.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz, Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Bowman,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
and Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
That passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Good luck with your project. The next item is a consistency ruling. We're going to review a ruling for 432 Cherry Street. The petitioner is seeking a consistency ruling from the Commissioner of Inspectional Services to increase the height of the proposed multifamily building. The Commissioner is seeking the opinion of our committee on this matter. Ms. Clement.
All right, let me just share my screen. And this will be a fairly short presentation. I just want to note that the petitioner found out only very late that this is going to be on the calendar due to an error on my part. So I'm not sure if he'll be here to say anything, but my apologies to Mr. Morris about that. So this is petition 56618, a consistency request for 432 Cherry Street. The property consists of 14,204 square feet in the BU1 zone in West Newton. It's improved with a 2.5-story Georgian style structure that was built circa 1716, and it is a landmark preservation site. The petitioner obtained a special permit in 2019 rather, to convert office space within the historic structure into 6 residential units and to construct an additional multifamily dwelling on the site, which would be 3 stories tall and 30 feet in height. That petition was further amended in 2021 to construct the previously approved building and maintain the existing office use, to allow for changes to the previously approved parking and to waive 4 additional parking stalls. Then this January, on January 26th, the Newton Historic Commission approved amended plans, which would increase the height of the new multifamily building to 35.4 feet from the 30 feet that was approved. The petitioner has requested a consistency ruling from ISD regarding that change in height, and the commissioner is seeking guidance from the Land Use Committee on the matter. So the amended plan increases the ridge height of the roof from 30 feet to 35.4. The petitioner has stated that this increase in height will allow the floor-to-floor height to be 10 feet, whereas the approved height of 30 feet would only allow about 7.5 feet floor-to-floor, which they stated would be difficult to work with. If approved, the proposed new building would be about 3 feet higher than the historic building on the site. Because the site is a bit sloped, parts of the new building would be a bit taller than 3 feet, to the historic structure. And the pitch of the roof has also been slightly altered, which you can see a bit better in the left elevation. But other than the pitch of the roof and the increase in height, the plans are substantially the same. So that's all I have on that.
Okay, and Historic did approve. They actually liked this. Rumor be told, even better than the original.
They did approve it. It wasn't unanimous, but folks at that meeting did express that in some ways this would be preferable and more in keeping with what historically would have been there.
Okay. All right. And we don't have Mr. Morris here to add anything to it or anybody from the petitioner, do we? If we do, speak up. Okay. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this? I don't see anybody in the chamber, anybody at home on Zoom. I will go to the council. Councilor Laredo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Kemet, what was the vote of the Historic Commission?
I can take a look. I believe I attached it, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I think there were 2 folks that disagreed, and I think the rest were in favor, but I can verify that now.
And just, can you remind me how many members are voting on the Historic Commission? Is it 5 or 7?
I believe it's 7, but I rarely attend, so let me just double check.
Well, that's fine. I'm not going to hold you to that. So was there any I mean, this is not a de minimis change. This is a 6-foot change, which is pretty significant in my view. Do you have any idea why this change was made, why it wasn't done earlier? Anything at all?
Councilor Laredo, I can jump in. There is a bit of history with this one. I remember handling this request back in 2021, and there was an increase in the pitch of the roof that was not explained to the Historic Commission. At that time, I believe the commission, the makeup of the commission was a little different, and they were not supportive of the changes. I can't say if this is the exact same project, but in 2021, they did submit plans showing the new building getting taller. At that time, Historic was not supportive, so they didn't have to change the plans to reduce the height. It looks like they've done some work since and have now submitted plans, and I think due to the change in makeup of the Historic Commission, they now are supportive. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 5 were in the affirmative and 2 voted against it.
Yeah, so I have to say this concerns me. We had a Historic Commission that previously expressed displeasure with the same plan. We had the mayor appoint new members to the commission, and now they've come back for the same bite, second bite of the same apple, so to speak. And now it's all good and fine. I don't see 6 feet being consistent. I think that's a different project. And if it was, you know, a foot or 2, some architectural mistake, I would have no problems about this whatsoever, but I'm not comfortable with this right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kelly.
Thank you. Ms. Sandoval, would you mind pulling up the elevation showing the existing and the proposed again for us to take a look at that while I chat? I was at that Historic Commission meeting and we have seen this project come before the City Council in numerous iterations several times. I don't believe that this is the same plan that was presented before with just different membership. That is not my recollection of it. So it is a little under 5.5 feet taller. One of the things I was impressed at the Historical Commission meeting was, instead of just looking at this plan, they actually put it in context of the neighborhood in terms of heights of surrounding buildings, which also include the graded heights. And it was their feeling, or a majority of the voting members feeling, that in fact, this somewhat taller building fit better into the context than this 30-foot one would have. And I remember thinking, oh, that's something, I'm really glad that they have put that up and compared it to numerous structures nearby on Webster Street and on Cherry Street. I'm interested to hear what other people have to say, but I was convinced by that Historical Commission meeting that this elevation was preferable, that having a higher ceiling height made it much more workable for them to work, rather than a 7 or 7.5 foot ceiling height as would have been in this 30-foot building. I liked it. I still like it, and I'm happy with it, and I will move acceptance after whoever else wants to talk, and I'll also move to close the public hearing after anyone else who wants to
Sure.
speak speaks.
Thank you. My reference in the beginning to the fact that it was favorable, there were some favorable things said about this change was exactly what Councillor Kelly referred to from the committee members at the Historical Commission. And we do take some guidance from them, and 5 to 2 and the consistency with the height in the neighborhood is something that we need to listen to, not necessarily what the commission, the old commission that's no longer gathered, thinks. Councilor Bowman.
Thank you. I will associate my comments with those of Councillor Kelly. The 3 buildings directly across the street are at least 3 full stories high. I'll also note that this is less than a block off of, off of the main street, Washington in West Newton. And so a place, and, directly behind the police station. So I think a place that a slightly higher building is perfectly appropriate. It's not like it's towering over a small cape or anything else. I think that it's, and I do think that the pitch of the roof matters a great deal. It definitely makes it look much more historic, and I would strongly support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I do have questions, but they probably can't be answered because the petitioner is not here to answer them. So I don't feel comfortable voting for this tonight. It's not so much the 5.5 feet. That doesn't really bother me, but I don't know why all of a sudden they have to come back now for this ruling, and they're not here in front of this committee. So I would ask questions, but the petitioner can't answer them. So I'm stuck. So I can't vote for it tonight. I would like to, but
You could try to ask some questions to Ms. Kemet, who apologized for the late notice to them, but
Yeah.
maybe she could answer some of your questions.
okay, I'll try.
Can I also remind the committee, so this is a consistency ruling, so
That's right.
technically there is no vote. It's more of a informal sort of opinion to the Commissioner of Inspectional Services. I know it's probably makes sense to take a vote just to get the temperature of the committee, but it's also sort of lesser of a threshold than your typical special permit.
It is a straw vote that we will pass along to him, and he
Yeah.
can do what he wants with it.
Yeah, so, so basically, if it, again, what Councilor Laredo said, if it was a couple of feet, this would be nothing. We've already would have voted in favor probably, but 5 to 6 feet. So I was just wondering, like, what happened? When 7.5 feet, how come the petitioner didn't see that when they were coming up with the plans for the project? That they didn't notice that then, and they're noticing it now. Like, that's a big deal, if you ask me, when your ceiling is only 7.5 feet high. That's the question. But
What makes it a big deal?
7.5 feet, it's kind of short.
No, but what makes it a big deal to fix that with an extra 5.5 feet to make the ceiling heights?
Yeah, I just want to know, like, what went wrong? How come they didn't see that then when they were coming up with the plans, when they were drawing up, when they were drawing it up? Like, what?
I think they kept it within what the Historical Commission would allow, and they went back for a second try, and they got a different answer,
Yeah, well,
right?
again,
Okay.
I'm good.
Anything else?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Councilor Maliki?
Thank you. Yes, I too am kind of disturbed by the idea that the composition of the Historical Commission changed and then they get a different answer. Also, I just measured my own ceiling. It's 8 feet. It feels plenty roomy. So I don't see 7.5 feet being a hardship. I would ask what ceiling height are they trying to achieve with the 10-foot separation of floors?
Ms. Kemet?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
What ceiling height floor to ceiling are they trying to achieve with the 10-foot floor to floor distance?
The only number that they mentioned at the historic meeting was that it would be it would allow them to have a 10-foot floor to floor height internally.
That's what it achieves.
So adding 5.5 feet to the total building, you're basically talking about the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. That seems like an awfully big change to get a height that would be, we don't even know how high. I guess my question would be, how high would they have to make the building to have 8-foot ceilings? Because I mean, my concern here is, we've got a landmark, a city landmark next door, and it's already downhill a bit from Webster Street itself. And rather than being concerned about matching the heights of the buildings on Webster Street, I'd be more concerned about not overpowering the landmark. And it's also kind of odd to hear matching neighboring houses on Webster Street be used as a justification for letting the building get taller, when it doesn't seem to help when people want to build buildings that are taller than the next door houses.
Thank you. Okay, reminder, this is not a hard, fast vote. We're just giving a straw poll consistency to ISD, to Mr. Lojek. For my opinion, this is 5.5 feet different. It is still under 36 feet, which is our max for any single-family home in the neighborhood. The difference of 5.5 feet is not egregious, isn't a big deal. And if Historic had a problem with it, I would be voting against it, which I will not be. Councillor Downs?
So I can imagine why they might want slightly higher floors, and that would be so that in a future iteration, this building could have a commercial first floor. I know that we want to have more commercial because it has a higher tax, produces higher taxes for the city. And I think this, if this passes muster with Historic, it's fine with me. So I will be voting. My sense is we should vote for it.
Thank you. By the way, there is no public hearing on this. Councillor Laredo?
Just a quick question. Councillor Downs, did you say that the first floor was going to be commercial?
No, she said potentially in the future. I don't know if that's
Ms. Kemet, is that an allowed use under the special permit?
They would need to come back and amend their special permit.
So it's not, under the current special permit, there's no ability to have commercial on the first floor, because they actually wanted commercial initially, or office, and then they converted from office to residential. Isn't that right?
So that's for the existing building. So there's existing historical building on site. Yeah. It's currently commercial. They did get approval for residential, and then they came back to go back to commercial. But this new building has always been residential for 3 units.
Okay, so I think it's a residential building.
Yes.
Good, bad, or indifferent. That's how it is. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great. So let's take a straw poll, people, to give our advice to Mr. Lojak. If you think this is consistent with the project, please, maybe we'll call the roll just so we can hear it. Go ahead.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye, yes, consistent.
Councillor Greenberg?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Councillor Markowitz?
No.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Bowman?
Aye.
Councillor Laredo?
No.
And Councillor Lipoff?
Aye.
So that's 6-2 for the straw vote.
Great, thank you. You will report that to Mr. Lojak. Thank you. All right, the next item is 113 Shauna Guerin and Robert Dunn, trustees of D&G Realty Trust. Request to add 40 patio seats and to remove 6 parking stalls and to amend special permit 501-94 at 344, 346 Elliott Street. Ms. Kemet, can you give us your report, please?
Yes. Okay, this is petition 11323 at 344, 346 Elliott Street. The petitioners here are proposing to amend their prior special permit with site plan modifications to remove 10 parking stalls to be used for outdoor dining seats, which requires a waiver of 24 parking stalls. Several special permits have been granted for the property since 1994, including relief for the number of seats at the restaurant and parking waivers. The most recent special permit in 2016 granted relief for a retaining wall, waivers for parking lot screening and lighting requirements, and dimensional relief for parking. The petitioner now proposes to remove 10 parking stalls and convert that space to 40 outdoor dining seats, which would bring the total number of seats at the restaurant to 109. The seating area requires an amendment to that special permit to waive 24 parking stalls and amend the site plan to reflect the creation of the outdoor seating area. We did receive updated plans on Friday for this project. So the memo associated with this is a little different from the plans that we'll discuss tonight, just in case anyone is a little confused on that front. In reviewing this request, the council should consider whether the site in BU1 is an appropriate location for the requested parking waivers, if the requested waivers will not adversely affect the neighborhood, if the requested waivers will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if literal compliance with the required amount of parking is impracticable due to the nature of the use or the location, size, width, depth, shape, or grade of the lot, and if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. So the property is located in the BU1 district in Newton Upper Falls. There's a diverse variety of uses in the area, including single and multifamily residences, mixed-use structures, commercial, and open space. The zoning is similarly a bit of a mix, including BU1, MR2, MR3, manufacturing, and public use, and it is in close proximity to the 59 bus. The property is 9,676 square feet. It's improved with the 2-story 69-seat restaurant that is approximately 5,600 square feet. It's Dungarins is the name it's been operating under. There is an existing 6-foot wall stockade fence at the southern end of the east lot line, which continues along the southern boundary on top of an existing retaining wall. There's a wood panel fence on the eastern property line, a stockade fence on portions of the western lot line by the storage and dumpster area, and a chain link fence on the rest of that lot line. The property is generally level. It has 16 parking spaces currently, including 1 accessible stall that are all accessed via a curb cut on Elliott Street. The stalls are all located along the eastern side of the property, and they are not currently striped. There are no new structures proposed in this plan. This is the most recent one, which was submitted Friday. This is not what was in the packet. It's a bit different. This revised site plan indicates that the patio seating will accommodate 40 patrons, and it will be placed close to the eastern wall of the restaurant, separated from that structure by an access and service aisle. So in the memo, we talked about that area would have been at the far back of the property. It has been moved closer to Elliott Street and closer to the restaurant. And jersey barriers are shown between the driveway and the patio seating to protect patrons from cars entering and leaving. A total of 10 parking stalls that are currently on the site will be removed, which would leave 6 parking stalls on the site, including 1 accessible stall. The department does want to note that the accessible stall shown in this revised plan is right in front of an existing dumpster. So if there is any chance that at any time there will be obstructions in the stall, including trash cans or debris, that location might not be appropriate in terms of accessibility because it needs to be clear at all times except for vehicles that are parked there. Additionally, bike racks are not shown on that site plan, which is required by condition 19 of their special permit. Let me just go back really quickly. The petitioner also proposes to remove the landscape area at the southeast corner of the site and create a new one at the southwest corner of the site, closer to where the parking will be relocated. There were no details that were provided regarding the size or species for those plantings, but the location is just a bit to the side of what's currently there. In terms of operations, the petitioner provided a narrative that explains some of the accommodations made on that front. The petitioner has made efforts to mitigate the impact of outdoor seating on neighbors by moving the seating close to the restaurant and away from neighboring residences. The seating will not be used at all times. It's seasonal in nature, so it will only be used when weather allows for it. And when not used as dining area, it will revert back to parking. We recommend that the petitioner consider adding striping or pavement markings to delineate a visual path for pedestrians if pedestrians are going to be accessing the outdoor seating via that parking lot. And according to the narrative provided, the kitchen closes at 9 p.m. No permanent lighting will be installed, only string lights along the perimeter, and the noise ordinance would apply to any music or activities on the site. The Inspectional Services Department have issued a zoning enforcement violation to the petitioner earlier this month with a few things noted for failing to comply with elements of their current special permit. So we would just ask that the petitioner explain their plan to come into compliance and remedy these violations. That includes violations of condition 1, 8, and 13 related to landscaping. ISD noted that plantings on site are not sufficient to fulfill what was shown in the approved landscape plan. Condition 14 requires striped parking stalls and 9.5 feet in width between each stall, which is not currently the case. Condition 15 requires certain parking signage on the site, which has not been maintained. And the bike racks required by condition 19 are not shown on any of the site plans submitted. So if they have been created, letting us know where they are and adding that to the plan. And that's all I have for now.
Great, thank you very much. Is there a representative for the petitioner here?
There is, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bookbinder, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, other counselors. For the record, Stephen Bookbinder, an attorney with the law firm of Schlesinger and Bookbinder, with offices at 1200 Walnut Street in Newton Highlands. And I'm here this evening on behalf of the petitioner. Shauna is she's in the background. She's having some technical difficulties, but I hope she'll be joining us in a moment. And Vern Porter, our civil engineer and land surveyor, is with us, along with my colleague, Kathy Winters. And I appreciate Ms. Kemet's very comprehensive summary. So as you all know, the property is at 346 Elliott Street. It's in a Business 1 district. Dunn's has been operating there since 1991, and there were 2 other restaurants which had been operating there previously. So the site has had a restaurant for many, many years. The restaurant's operating pursuant to a special permit, which originally was granted in the early 90s, and there have been amendments in 2008 and 2016. The genesis for the request tonight really stems back to the onslaught of the pandemic. Beginning in 1920, the restaurant operated an outdoor dining patio in its parking area pursuant to the city's COVID-related outdoor dining program, and also some guidelines issued by the state. On-site parking was eliminated at that time in order to accommodate the outdoor seating. The outdoor dining program proved very successful, was very popular in the city. And once the emergency COVID-related measures have passed, Shauna decided she'd like to memorialize not all, but some of that seating. The prior outdoor seating actually was well in excess of the 40 seats, but we're looking for 40 seats today. I do want to apologize for the shift in plans. We originally submitted a plan. Kathy, can you just show us slide 2, please? Yeah, so we originally submitted a plan, as Ms. Kemet said, which really had the parking in the back left-hand corner. I had asked Shauna to go out and meet with her immediate abutters. And in meeting with those immediate abutters, there were at least 2 who requested that she move that outdoor seating from the left rear corner of the site and relocate it adjacent to the existing restaurant building. And that resulted in the revised plan that we submitted at the end of last week, which Kathy will show you. I actually think this is a better plan. It keeps the patrons closer to the entrance. And Kathy, can you point out the rear entrance where staff will come and go? Ms. Kemet, I think that we will not have patrons walking into the outdoor seating. That did happen during the pandemic. I think now everybody's got to go inside and they're going to be ushered to the appropriate seat. I think that's much safer, frankly, and will afford some control by the restaurant. So the plan is to have the 40 seats there. We can take a look at that handicap parking stall. I know that the dumpsters are generally unloaded very, very early in the morning before the restaurant's open, but we'll certainly take a look at that. There were very, very few complaints. I think during the pandemic, there might have been 1 or 2 noise complaints, but very rarely. There's no live music out there. There's recorded music, which is piped out, and we can keep it at a low volume. And, we certainly don't want to cause anything that's an annoyance to any of our neighbors. We do need a waiver of the parking stall. Shauna doesn't believe she really needs any parking on site because there are a lot of off-site spaces here. We submitted a plan, which Kathy can turn to now, that Vern Porter did. It's 2 sheets, and I know it's too small for anybody to read the spaces, but the long and short of it is that on Hale Street, Chestnut Street, Oak Street, and Elliott Street, Vern has identified 181 off-site spaces. In addition to that, as I think most of you have probably been there, it's a local restaurant. A lot of people walk there, and there are also some people who will take Uber or Lyft if they go in and have some drinks. I know the planning department noted in its memo that requiring the full required parking on site would really be at odds with the historic fabric of the neighborhood and the city's sustainability goals. The planning department concurs that there are sufficient alternative options to meet the transportation needs without requiring the parking on site. I did want to say that we will stripe the parking spaces, but we wanted to wait until we got through tonight so you can make wait really till we get through the final council. But if this is approved, we would then stripe in accordance with whatever the ultimate council order says. Shauna runs a very tight ship, as most of you know. She will close that patio at the appointed hour. And folks will not be ushered out there, at 9 or 9:15 to have a meal that can't be consumed in 15 minutes. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. She's got a very experienced managerial staff and wait staff, as I think most of you know. And, she really operated very, very well during COVID with more seats out there. I do want to ask Kathy Winters. Kathy has been working with Andy Mavroulis at ISD in the violations. So I did want Kathy to address those, Mr. Chairman, and that would probably wrap up our presentation.
Great, thank you. That was a question.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. So as for the landscaping, Shauna has replaced some of the landscaping back here, refreshed it to comply with the special permit condition. This landscaping area here, she's going to wait to see if this plan is approved because it's effectively being moved over here, right? So that area will be planted. As far as the sign, she's replaced the sign over the weekend. It had gotten knocked down. The signage along the wall, for anyone who's been there would know that those signs were there, informing folks that they needed to back their cars in, but the signposts on the street, as you enter the parking lot, had been knocked down. So she replaced that over the weekend.
Kathy, do you have pictures of that, Kathy?
Yeah, I can pull that
Yeah, I
up.
think
Let me
it might
just,
be
I'll pull that up in a second, because
Sure.
first I want to point out one thing, and it's hard to see on here, but there is, we did add a proposed bike rack location to the plan. If you can see it, it's right down here, to the side of the building by Elliott Street. So let me stop my screen share here and just give me a second to pull up those pictures. Thanks, guys. So here's the sign. You can see it's the original sign. It just needed to be reinstalled into the pavement. And then I'll scroll to the front. This is some additional landscaping she added along that side. And so that's all I have regarding those violations. As Steve said, the 9.5 foot wide stalls will be restriped according to whatever plan is approved.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anybody here in the chamber that wishes to speak regarding this? Please come up to the microphone. Councilor Bone, if you could help me turn that on. And state your name and address. You've got 2 minutes to speak.
Can I share my screen?
No.
No?
Nope. 2 minutes to speak.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Well,
It's just a hard, fast rule we have.
I can forward to, okay, thank you, that would be great. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak. My name is Despina Fellis, and I own 9-11 Hale Street, which directly about.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, and we're happy to take whatever by mail. We just have found out that if we let people have full presentations, we're
It's just
we're till
pictures,
midnight.
but I completely
Okay.
understand.
Sure,
I'll
go
forward
ahead.
it after. So we directly abut Dungannon Restaurant. I've lived there since 1998, and I currently reside at 9 Hill Street with my daughter, who's 2.5, and my elderly mom. I've rented 11 Hill Street to a young family and their daughter, so it is a two-family house. And I'm here representing myself as a direct abutter, the petitioner, a neighbor, citizen of Newton, and also speaking on behalf of my family and as a landlord. On Thursday, April 13th, I received a notice regarding tonight's hearing. And on April 14th, Shauna did come by with two of her managers, Linda and Tom, to introduce themselves and to exchange direct contact information. I want to thank Shauna personally for taking that step. I really do appreciate that and wanting to do things differently this time and have us be inclusive in her plans. Since then, we've had communication through text, through phone calls, we ended up meeting on Wednesday, April 19th to review the proposed plans, hence the revised plans that we just saw right now. I also had invited Robert, who owns 1076 Chestnut Street, to the meeting. He's another direct abutter. I also had invited our neighbors from 15 Hill Street. However, they were not able to make it, and unfortunately, they're not able here tonight. At our meeting on Wednesday, the 19th, we proposed and came to the agreement that the tables be below the fence line. In review, though, of the documentation uploaded by Shauna's attorney on Friday night, I do have a few questions and additional safety concerns. Therefore, I'm not at the point where I can stand before you and support this petition at this time.
Just a little,
loud?
little distance, just a little distance.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, go ahead, continue. Don't rush, I'm giving you more than 2 minutes, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I didn't know this was timed.
It's okay.
In review of the documentation uploaded by Shauna's attorney on Friday night, I do have a couple of questions and safety concerns. So I want to just bring them up to the attention, and I'd love the opportunity to work with this with Shauna. I don't think we're there yet, though. So my first question was answered. I didn't know which plan was going to be reviewed because it was kind of confusing. The documentation had information regarding the old plan, but then the new plan was submitted, so that was a little confusing, but it was clarified tonight. And my questions are, is this a permanent or a temporary permit? The night that Shauna came by to introduce herself, there were people on the patio that same night, on that Friday night. There were people out there on using fire pits and drinking until probably 11:15. When Shauna mentioned it, I mentioned this to Shauna at our meeting, and she said it was her staff. So this is just a little concerning on my end that employee consumption is happening, since that's strictly prohibited, and then also fire pits are not allowed in the city of Newton. Shauna mentioned that she had gone in front of the board to update her alcohol license. And I don't think we ever received a notice for that. And I think according to the alcohol licensing regulations, we should have as abutters. So just wanted to bring that to attention. I'm not sure how 40 seats were selected, but is it like a magic number for the number of parking spots that were taken away? I don't know, could there be less? And my pictures actually would show why. What time is last call? According to the city of Newton, alcohol licensing regulations, the last call must be made a half hour before closing. So what is the official closing time? Her website is different from what was submitted on Friday's documentation. It is noted that the kitchen closes at 9. Does this mean that people that will sit at the outdoor patio will be required to eat, or can they sit and drink? Does this mean that, like, does that seating stop? In regards to the executive order in 2020 that was issued regarding the pandemic, I do believe it's irrelevant in the situation. We're no longer in the pandemic, and it shouldn't be used as a continuous, to continue the extraneous measures that we did take to have people get through that. It negatively impacted my family, especially my daughter. She's 2.5, but she was born during the height of COVID, and her bedroom is right at the back of the house, and I've never been able to use it as her bedroom to this day. I just transferred it to a twin bed, so hopefully this will, I don't know, work. So I just want to be clear, this is strictly for revenue purposes and not to quote the pandemic. It is noted in the documentation that the volume we kept at a reasonable volume. What is reasonable to me and to you might be different. So I would like documentation indicating that the noise ordinance is in compliance, and specifically documentation taken that it does not exceed noise pollution. I had emailed Shauna information regarding the noise ordinance, and she did agree to turn the music off at 9 p.m. This had been an issue during the pandemic, and I did file complaints, but we agreed, so I would love that to be in writing. In the proposal, it also mentions that outdoor dining would be converted back to parking during inclement weather. If that could be defined, that would be helpful. Does that mean winter months, December, January? We all know we live in New England, and that just means nothing to us. So it could, snow 2 feet in April. So what does that actually mean? And that's helpful for me as a landlord, and also for my own knowledge, what I'm living next to. Shauna mentioned there would be no tents. And I would like that to be included in the documentation. I didn't see it in the documents that the attorney provided. And I think that was it. And then I just have some pictures just to show the proximity of our homes to the restaurant. It is, my house is 10 feet away from the fence, and then probably another few feet from where the patrons would be sitting. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can get us to the clerk's office, and they can get or you just email your presentation, and the committee will receive it. There were a bunch of your questions that have already been answered in the presentation, but we can make sure that all of that gets into a council order if it comes to that. In the presentation, they did say December and January would be the months that they would not be using it. And there was
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you could add February.
That's wise. December, January, and February it would not be used. Mr. Bookbinder, were you taking notes on all of these things? Would you like to respond to the things that have already been identified as what they're willing to do and respond to some of the questions that she just asked?
Sure, I will take a few, and then with your permission, I'll ask Shauna Gearin herself to respond to some of the others.
Great, thank you.
So, and this is for Ms. Fels's edification. So nothing's ever permanent, Ms. Fels, in the sense we get permission from the council. It can be changed at any time, but this would be for the foreseeable future. And I think Shauna would have no plans to take away the outdoor seating. So I think she is looking to have it in place for the foreseeable future. In terms of seating, we really fell on the 40 seats. We were mindful, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, of the requirements for lavatories, and we actually could have gone up to 119 seats. We just felt that might be a few too many, so we settled in on 40. But in all candor, the 40 is not a magic number. It could be 38, it could be 42. It seemed to fit. She actually had more seats there during the pandemic. Shauna, would you address, please, your operation, when you're going to close the patio down, last call? I think those are valid issues. There's no intent for people to be sitting out there drinking, when it's not part of their dinner. But Shauna, would you jump in and just address some of that?
Good evening, everyone. I am having a little technical difficulty. I don't know if I'm echoing. Am I echoing, Steve?
Yes, you are. Very.
Okay, 1
very
minute,
bad.
please. I'm going to exit this. Okay, this should be better. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, that's better, Shauna.
Is that better?
Yes, go on.
Good evening, everyone. Shauna Dunn-Garin, speaking on behalf of Robert Dunn and myself. I can respond to some of that, Steve. You want me to speak directly to the hours of operation. We have agreed that we would only operate outside until 9 p.m. And in concern for Despina, I know that she's just at the stage now where she's questioning all that we've discussed, and fair that she can be concerned, and I'm happy to work with her on that, but we will limit it to 9 o'clock. The kitchen does close at 9, and we will not, if people linger, Despina, we would move them inside so that they wouldn't be a burden to your neighborhood. The other evening, we had unseasonably warm weather. It was beautiful. And much to my dismay, some of the staff members who were off, they were not employed or clocked in at the time, had some friends come, and I didn't want them to take up space inside the restaurant because we have such limited seating. So they sat outside. Those fire pits will be going back to my residents. They won't be there, so they won't have an opportunity to do that again. And I'm sorry for that disruption. The pandemic issue, the customers have just come to really, really rely on outdoor dining. And the customer is really the person, and the communities are the ones that are really crying out for outdoor dining. And it has been a really big part of our business now. And going forward, I think that you're going to see it nationwide, that it's something that all folks are really, really embracing. In terms of the ABCC petition that Despina is referring to, we did notify it. We had to publish it. We followed the protocol by the state when we had to request those extensions. So certainly everything was, all of our I's were dotted and our T's were crossed. I'm positive of that.
Okay.
Steve, is there anything else you want me to speak to?
No, the only other thing, Mr. Chairman, I thought we should explore, when she's not going to have the outdoor seating December, January, February. I guess it's theoretically possible that she could park cars there at that time. I'm just wondering, that's a lot of hustle bustle, and I'm not sure if we're not better, Sean, at just making this clean so that, we don't have two different sets of operating guidelines. I think it gets a little complicated, but I'm open to everyone else's thoughts on that.
Are you saying not bring back the parking in those winter months?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because I think then you need a whole new set of guidelines, and then we'd have parking. You might have parking on both sides of the driveway, because usually that parking now, Mr. Chair, that's at the front of the site is on the left-hand side, not the right. So and Vern may want to weigh in on this, but I think it gets a little choppy, and I'm not sure it's necessary to go through those.
You'd also have to move your Jersey barriers or whatever you have
Yeah,
is going to
yeah.
delineate that area, which is going to be a pain. Ms. Guerin, are you willing to have no tents at all?
Oh, Counselor, I'm awfully sorry. Oh, absolutely, they're gone. The tent is gone because now anybody who, would want to be under a tent can now go inside. So it's just the folks who want to be directly outside that we need to
Sure,
keep.
so noted.
I will not bear the expense of a
Yeah,
tent
it
again.
was right. It was a question from the neighbor, so I just wanted to go on record with that there'll be no tents. Okay? All right, anybody else from the neighborhood? Come on up, state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Robert Kopelman. I live at 1076 Chestnut Street in Newton, and I bought the property. In fact, when we did the parking, I was involved in that because we divided it up, and I had the back piece and they had the front piece. So at that time, and I'm in support of this, so I don't want anybody to, but at that time, they brought in a plan to add outdoor dining. And, I was very opposed to it at the time, and they ended up putting it to the side. And then, of course, COVID hit, and I'm in the same type of business they are, and I realized that you have to survive, and they did the outside dining, and was it great all the time? No, but most of the time it was okay. When it was close to Despina's house and my house in the back, it was rough. It was loud, and well, we were in the middle of COVID. It was understandable. So when she came to us the other day with this, I think that was the thing to do, and we all sat down and thought of what we could live with, which would be to put it to the side of the building. It's certainly going to be a lot better, and I can understand her wanting the revenue of outside dining because she got used to it, and it's additional revenue, and people like sitting outside. So having said all this, I'm in support of this, but I'm also in support of it, and I don't know if it's possible to be able to live with it for a year and then revisit it. Instead of having it permanent forever, is this something we could do and live with for a year and see how it affects the neighborhood, see how it affects the parking, see how it affects everybody, and then revisit the whole thing again? Is that possible?
I'm not sure. Mr. Temple, can we get a comment from law?
So I'm just kind of mulling it over in my head as in real time here. I would recommend against that. Special permits, generally speaking, once they leave the city council, they don't come back. We could certainly have a requirement for a 1-year review and a kind of a check-in, but I don't know if we'd want to structure it so that it would require an additional approval past that 1 year. I don't think that would be my recommendation.
Okay, a potential look back, a review at 1 year. And our options at that time, we'd have options at that time?
No, I think the options would be the check-in would be to ensure that they are complying with all of the conditions and to.
Right, so.
I guess it would really be for that purpose.
Yeah, it'd really be for enforcement of whatever the permit is. And
right,
sure
you wouldn't have the ability
right.
to add additional conditions.
Right, we wouldn't have the ability to deny the permit after a year.
Right.
I think that's what you're kind of thinking about, and that's not legal for us to do.
I thought it would be nice if we all got to live with it, including them, to live with the setup they have and for us to live with it as a neighborhood. And then maybe even if it wasn't working for them and it needed to be tweaked or changed, or maybe Sean would say, hey, you know what, I want to give up all the parking and I want to widen it at the front. It just didn't work well, or I thought it might be an advantage for everybody.
Well, the petitioner does have the ability to come in and ask to alter that in any way on their own. Mm-hmm. But we can't allow the neighbor to have judgment on a past permit to deny it in the future. Mm-hmm. So We're just telling you like it is.
Yeah, no,
That's how the
and I
law
understand
works.
that.
And I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, you know, I think that she'll try hard, and I think she'll try to work with us. And, you know, as I said, being somebody with an establishment like that, the more people drink, the more they get rowdy and loud, and things change. It's hard to keep sometimes a lid on all of it. And that's why I was hoping we could live with it for a while.
I hear you.
It's not
Dungar-
possible.
Yeah, Dungarrons needs to be a good neighbor, and I think they'll try their best. And there are avenues of enforcement. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you have avenues to enforce this permit by going to ISD at any time.
No, I mean, I think we can work with Shauna, and I think that she would try to make it work. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else in the public? I see somebody online. Bonnie, can you state your full name and your address?
Hi, Bonnie Frazier, and I live at 331 Elliott Street, kitty corner to Dungarrons. And I'm not sure that the noise issue is from Dungarrons, but I do appreciate the fact that they're willing to move the seating closer to the building and closer to Elliott Street, because it is busier street. And I've lived here my whole life, so I know what's been there. And I appreciate what's there now. And I also know that if you have an issue, you can go to Shauna and she'll do what she can to rectify it. And I'm excited to think that there's going to be outdoor seating anywhere in the city, but particularly for Dungarrons. Thank you.
Thank you. We did approve, just for everybody who's listening in, outdoor dining that we've used in COVID for taking parking spaces in front of establishments. We have enjoyed that, and we have legalized that. So Dungarrons is on a street that they can't take something, space on the street, and that's why they're trying to do this. Mr. Riley.
Hi, Jerry Riley from 12 Spring Street. I live in the neighborhood. I've been a regular user during COVID of the outdoor dining, and really appreciate it. Since this change is about changing the parking requirements, for the last couple of years during COVID, the entire parking lot was there was no parking, and the entire parking lot was used for seating. And it worked reasonably well. So I think taking half of it, and especially with the changes that the neighbors requested, putting this thing by the door, by the building, I think it should be, I think it's going to be just fine. And the one other thing I'd say is, Dungarrons is, far and away the business in Upper Falls that is most involved in our community. It's one of the best in the city as well. And they're involved with all kinds of community stuff, everything from the Feast of the Fall to charity runs to delivering food to people who are sick in the neighborhood, donating to myriad causes. And Dungarrons bends over backwards to do everything they can to, for our community to thrive. And so I think, it's up to us, I think, to do what we can to, make Dungarrons thrive as well. So I urge you to approve the permit.
Thank you. And when you're done, Bonnie and Jerry, if you could take your hands down, that'd be great. David, state your full name and address.
My name is Matthew Jakowski. I'm at 36 Indiana Terrace in Newton Upper Falls.
Okay.
And I'm one of the patrons, and I'm one of the ones that walks and doesn't have to worry about finding a parking space in the neighborhood. I'd just like to put out a supportive comments to this business, to Shauna and her staff, who are, as Jerry said, such builders of community support. Also, as a local employer, I've watched so many teenage children grow into adulthood by making a fair salary there over the period of time. And I think what's presented is reasonable, 40 seats outdoors. I've watched it and patronized during the COVID, and it's a downscaled project that I think has limited impact, and just want to express that support.
Thank you very much. Mr. Freeze. Can you unmute, please?
Sorry. Jonathan Fries, 43 Wild Road, also a patron of Dunn's. And you had mentioned that the city was encouraging outside dining. What's at Dunn's is very unusual. They've got a great situation. The patio that they had for the last 3 years was a wonderful thing for my family and friends, the elderly, people who they weren't comfortable going inside. They're still not comfortable going inside. You could bring them out there and it was room. They weren't on a sidewalk. They don't want to be on a sidewalk. They don't want to be in a parking space with cars going by them. They need a little space, and they could sit there and reminisce of Italy and some piazza and just enjoy the open space. This new amenity will be even nicer. It'll be cozier. And I think it's a terrific thing for Newton because we don't have a lot of outdoor spaces like that. The sidewalks are fine, the parking spaces are fine, but this is something special. Shauna does an amazing job. She's in the Hall of Fame of Business Owners in Newton. She's just pretty responsive to everybody. And I think we should do what we can to try to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, full disclosure, has done the site plan for this, but I think he lives next door too. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Vern Porter. I live at 324 Elliott Street, and I have an office at 354 Elliott Street. So I walk by to go to work. I walk by Dunn & Garrens, and as a neighbor, full disclosure, I did work. I did do the plans, but I live here. I enjoy the patrons of Dunn & Garrens. They park in front of my house and up the street. And it's enjoyable to sit outside and talk to them as they go by. They're very pleasant, very nice. And they always ask, is it okay if we park here? And I'm like, absolutely park there. There's more room over there. And we help them to find spaces because it is a nice establishment. It's a nice place to go. I am also one of the ones that gets to walk down and not have to park. But I think a lot of people in the neighborhood do that. And we really do enjoy having Shauna and Dunn & Garrens in this neighborhood, and it really makes it a nice neighborhood. And I just want to thank her for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Anthony, state your full name and address. Unmute. We cannot hear you. Please unmute, Anthony. Hit the unmute button. Can you unmute him yourself? Anthony, we cannot hear you. Can you please unmute? Now he's frozen. Okay. Anybody else from the public who wishes to speak? Mr. Porter, you can lower your hand. Okay. Until Anthony comes back, I'm going to take it into the council. Who wants to comment? Speak about this? Councillor Kelly.
I'm just going to ask a question, which Mr. Bookbinder pointed out too, the issue around it. I hadn't seen the new layout just until tonight. So originally it was said that during the months that the parking lot wasn't going to be used for seating, it would revert to parking. And Mr. Bookbinder pointed out that might be tricky, and the chair mentioned too the moving of the Jersey barriers. So if that is still a concept, and perhaps both Shauna Guerin and Mr. Porter might want to address it, where would you put the parking? Because it would be odd to put it where it was before and then have the driving lane on the right and then switch over to the left. I'm just like trying to picture what the layout of that would be, and I'm not myself sure that it's really necessary at all. I'm glad that you'll stripe the parking spots. I'm assuming you're not going to require people to back in anymore. I never did that. I parked elsewhere, so I would not have to back into those parking spots. Moving that little planted area in the back to the other side, I guess west side of the parking lot, really makes sense because it gives a little more room for those cars to back up into in order to head out also. So I think that landscaping really made sense. And Shauna, I'm just saying it all at once, and whoever wants to answer can. You mentioned you're not going to have the tent again, which I understand because now people can go inside, but will there be some shade? Like, will you have tables that have umbrellas in them? Because I certainly know in the summer, many people, including me, would prefer to sit under some shade, but I'm glad you won't have to bear the expense of putting up a tent. But those are some of my questions for tonight. But overall, I do support this. And as I think one of the neighbors pointed out, this is a different kind of outdoor dining than a lot of restaurants in Newton have. It's not right on the sidewalk. It's not in a parklet. It's not on the street. I really like that it's set back. I think it makes sense to move it closer to the restaurant side. I actually like the plan that came before us tonight. But let's talk a little more about whether the parking will come back in the winter, and if so, where will it be? And I'm glad you put in a bike rack.
Right, we're going to continue to take questions from the council. Mr. Bookbinder, I'd like you to have a sidebar with Ms. Guerin so you can come back with a definitive on what you want to do with the parking.
will.
Councilor Lucas?
I think the neighbor who lives on Hale Street who spoke up here, she had a question about when is last call, but I don't think that question was answered. So I was just wondering, when is last call?
The whole point here is that dining will end, outdoor will end at 9 o'clock.
Ends
They
at
will
9.
stop serving 15 minutes before. The whole thing is outdoor. They'll have to come inside. It doesn't matter what the restaurant is doing and what the laws are inside. This is what we are going to condition for the permit, okay?
Okay. I did have a question on the parking. We can always come back to it if they're not ready, but cars used to back into their parking spots, and looking at the site plan, it looks like they will probably continue to do that, although I'm just a little concerned with the parking stall furthest away from the street. I don't know if there's enough space for the car to back in, and if they do go head in, is there enough space for them to turn back out? So I was just wondering, is there enough space for that parking stall in the back?
Mr. Bookbinder, are you available?
Yes, no, I am. I'm sorry. I was just reading a message from my client.
Go ahead.
First of all, on the parking, December, January, February, let's forget it. She agrees. Let's just forget that parking. Vern, you're the best one to respond to Council Lucas's question, I think, on getting in and out of the parking spaces.
Yes, the parking spaces, Vern Porter, and Surveyor Civil Engineer, 354 Elliott. The parking spaces there are a little wider, and that's why we had, from the previous council order, we had the spaces 9.5 feet wide. The aisle is narrow. It always was narrow, and that's why we had the additional width, and that's why we asked people to back in. That last stall does have, where we're moving the landscaping out, is like a 5-foot strip that'll allow people to get into that last space. It will be tight, and they might have to, you're not going to go in one shot, but you'll be able to get into it. That one would be a little bit tricky, but the rest of them are fine. And as far as the handicap spot, that is the handicap entrance to the building there as well. And the dumpsters are picked up very early in the morning when the store is closed, the restaurant is closed. So that space, although it is right in front, it fits there best, and it's actually more room. That space has its full size, depth, everything. So it is the best spot for the handicap stall. And as far as the other spaces, I think it would be better if we could have just a permanent surround around the tables and not revert the parking back, because it is difficult, because we would have to switch. We can't stripe it because we'd have to switch sides. So if this is the layout, we should just leave the spaces that are out back and not use, even if they don't use the seating outside, not use the parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that there used to be a sign that said cars must back in, and it's according to Google Maps, it's been removed. I was just wondering, is that sign going to come back?
They showed in a picture that it is back, correct, Miss Winter?
It is back.
It is
It
back.
is back
They showed
now?
a si- They showed a
Yes,
picture.
it is back, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I must have missed that one. Thanks. Okay, all right, that's all I have for my questions for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Laredo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think this petition is just fine. And I agree with Attorney Bookbinder that we should not, and Mr. Porter, that we should not create special rules for 3 months of the year. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I think we do everyone a disservice with special permits that are overly complicated. We're better off with clear, bright line rules. Everyone can follow them. I have no problem with the handicap parking space. I agree with Mr. Porter's observation that if it's a dumpster pickup, maybe once or twice or even 3 times a week, certainly not going to be during the hours of operation. It wouldn't be in the business's interest to do that. The only comment I'd have, and it doesn't affect this petition, is I presume right now some of the parking is and across the street in that I forget the name of the large area there, which is a number of businesses.
Yeah, I'm old enough to call it the Mills Falls property.
Well, Councilor Lipoff, your side of town, not mine, so I'll defer to you on that. I'll guide you around my side of the city sometime. But my point being, that space, I presume, is used for parking. If and when in the distant future that gets redeveloped, as I expect it might at some point, that might create some additional parking issues in a tight neighborhood, but in no way should that interfere with this petition. So when it's ready, it's somebody else's ward, I'll be happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with everything you just said, Councilor Laredo, except I'm in Ward 8. You should come over and see where that is sometime. Okay. Councilor Markowitz.
Councilor Lipoff, I spent 3 summers working in the heart of Ward 8 for the city rec department. I know my way there pretty well. Thanks.
That's great. We're right next to Chestnut Hill where you live. Okay. Councilor Markowitz.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I remember Mills Falls too. I think even before I lived in Newton.
I loved that place. Go on.
Yeah. And that property, I've never had a problem parking in this area. I went in the lot one time and then I thought, why am I even bothering this? Even though it's, there are other establishments that I would say are kind of like Dungaren's where the parking is much tighter. I'll include the one in my own ward, Patty's, which is kind of an interesting comp for this. I also think with respect to the neighborhood, I've always felt that when you move someplace and there's an establishment already there, you kind of have to factor that into what it might be like to live near it. So you kind of already know that you're buying into the neighborhood and that's part of the neighborhood. But I don't have any issue with the parking and I will join everyone. I'm ready to support this too. Good luck to them.
Thank you very much. How about a last word, Councilor Humphrey?
Oh, actually, I don't think I'm going to be the last word,
No, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman. I see my 2 colleagues are about to probably say the same thing as I am, which is that
yeah, I got
we're
you.
all in support of this proposal and maintaining outdoor dining. It's been a huge benefit, obviously, not only to the restaurant itself, but to the surrounding community. I think all of us live at 5 to 15-minute walk from here. I also want to express my appreciation that Shauna has been willing to work with the neighbors on trying to, come up with the best version of this that works for the neighbors as well. It's not necessarily abstractly the best version for the restaurant alone, but it's, we're trying to contextually figure out how to fit it into the neighborhood around it. And so I certainly appreciate that willingness to be a little flexible on that. But it's going to be great to have continued outdoor dining as a ongoing thing at this location. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I am colorblind, so Councilor Crossley, I can't see your little hand up in the sky behind you. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's because the sky's so pretty, it's distracting, right? So I agree with everything that, of course, Councillor Humphrey said, and also Councillor Laredo and most of you. I would go so far as to say, I'm not sure why we need to have parking at this site at all. It's a conversation for another day. I understand, trying to squeeze in as much parking as possible. So the waiver is small as possible, perhaps, but this is an area where it is very easy to park. We live a little over a half mile from here, 5 blocks or so, and we do sometimes drive, especially when we're just doing takeout on the way home. But this is a great establishment. I don't know anyone who's been in Dungarron's one time who doesn't fall in love with it. So it's very well run. And I completely trust Shauna and the staff to observe the requirements of the petition. And I'm glad that it looks like you all are on your way to supporting this petition, and I hope that's true. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Last word.
Well, I was going to move to close the public hearing. My own thoughts are just to echo my colleagues. I don't need to make the evening any longer, but I have good friends who are immunocompromised, who could not patronize Dungarron's as much as they would like to, because they will not eat inside. And so having outdoor dining is not just a nice to have for some people, it's the only way they will be able to come to Dunn's and other restaurants. And I think where we can afford people that, we can call it an amenity, but for some people, it's the only way they go out to eat. I really think we should. So I will move to close the public hearing and move on to approval.
Thank you. We have a motion to close the public hearing. I want to tell the public who's here, we hear your concerns. When we craft the council order, we will take those things into consideration. Motion to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is closed. We have a motion to approve by Councillor Downs. Can we take a look at a council order, please? Ms. Kemet?
Yeah, one moment. So, for findings, we have one, the site in a BU1 district is an appropriate location for the requested parking waivers because modest sized lots with less parking than would be required under current zoning is consistent with the historic pattern in Newton Upper Falls. And some on-site parking will remain and public transportation is available. 2, the requested waivers will not adversely affect the neighborhood because on-street parking is available nearby. 3, the waivers will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because the existing curb cut will remain unchanged. 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. And 5, literal compliance with the required amount of parking is in the public interest because constructing 20 additional parking stalls would require a substantial increase in impervious paving.
Mr. Chair, may I comment?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Laredo.
On number 1, the public transit, is that available when the restaurant is open?
The 59 bus runs, I don't know exactly when it ends, but I believe until at least 11.
11
I'm not positive, but I can double check that.
I don't think I don't think the public availability of that bus is really particularly relevant here. I think what would be more relevant is the fact that it's a walkable area for many patrons. That really strikes me as a more important than talking about public transit here. I just don't think that's a fair finding. And the only other suggestion I would make is in the second and to the 4th line, I think it can be simply that, I'm sorry.
Can you go back?
Yeah. I think it's because it's consistent with the historic pattern of commercial space in Newton Upper Falls. I think that's all you need to say. You don't need to have commentary about the current zoning requirements. So I'd request that that portion of it be stricken.
Mr. Temple, any issues with that? Ms. Kemet, any thoughts?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
no-
it. Otherwise, it looks great. Thank
Sure,
you.
not a big deal one way or the other, so it's no, you can take that out. Counselor Bowman?
So sorry, I was going to say that, I do feel that the Elliott T, although it's, just under a mile away, it's people in my neighborhood, I'm a mile from Newton Center and walk to Newton Center all the time. It's considered, I think that's a good distance. So I don't think public transportation is, I think it is available to get there for a variety of reasons. So I don't think we need to strike it, but.
Okay. I don't think it's germane either way to this. It's really, narrative trying to fill out what this site is. And so some of these things can become debatable, but not germane to the heart of the special permit. Counselor Downs?
Yeah, the 59 bus does go until 11. And, but I take Councilor Loreto's point. It really is a very walkable neighborhood. So I'm happy to add the walkability bit into this.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. We can just add
That's
the
fine with me,
walkability.
Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Let's add the walkability. It's a good point. So we actually blew it up a little bit more, and that's good. That's fine. Counselor Kelly?
Thanks. I agree with Councilor Bowman, though, that keeping in the public transportation is available piece seems appropriate to me here because, as Shauna Guerin mentioned, many of the employees take public transportation, whether it's that bus or the T. And we often ask, where do you expect employees to park? If we're talking about parking in general, not just customer parking, I think it's fine to leave the public transportation part in, but I wouldn't make a big deal of it.
Okay, yeah,
I'm fine, Mr. Chair, with leaving the public transit in, particularly if the bus does run
Sure.
to those hours.
Will do. We're leaving and adding the walkability. Okay, let's take a look at the conditions. All right.
So
Go ahead.
for conditions, we have the plan referencing and standard conditions for building permit. We've also brought forward a few from the previous special permit. So parking spaces shall be striped and maintained at 9.5 feet in width, no more than 109 seats for the restaurant, appropriate signage for parking, encourage restaurant customers to comply with all parking and other traffic safety regulations, and all deliveries to the restaurant shall occur from the parking area and at off-peak hours.
Okay, so Mr. Bookbinder,
Yeah.
are we getting rid of the parking for 12 months? Or do you want it in those winter months? What say you?
No, we do not want the parking in the winter months, Mr. Chairman. I also wanted to add, in fairness to Ms. Fells, I think we agreed, Shauna, correct me if I'm wrong, that, closing up at 9 o'clock outside, Sean, I think you agreed to that with Ms. Fells. I think that it would be appropriate to have that.
Yep, these are the things I want to add. Yeah.
And also no tents, I think we agreed. Maybe, one thing I'm thinking, Mr. Chairman, maybe no tents, except on a special occasion, perhaps. I don't, if somebody wanted to have a wedding or something there, maybe we could have a tent for a special occasion with the commissioner's approval, something like that, maybe. I don't want to complicate it.
It's we take the public comment to heart, and when you've got a site this tight, and we literally have somebody feet away, I really want to defer. So I really want to ask directly to you, ma'am, how you feel about that. Once in a blue moon, special thing to put a little tent up and have something.
Mr. Chair, while
Yes,
you're waiting in that. can
hold
I
on.
just have-
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Let's hold this for a second. I want to get everything out. We'll leave that for the end. Okay, so we've got the outdoor dining. We are going to be taking out the striping. Did we already do that? I think we should take out number 2 because there is no parking being striped. Or is this the parking at the rear?
No,
to be
that's the
striped?
parking at the rear. Mr.
Gotcha.
Chair.
Okay, so that stays in. Let's leave the tent for the end. What else do we have that we need to put in here? There's the noise ordinance that we don't need to put that in because everybody is subject to that in the city. But if you want to put it in as a condition, I don't think we need to. It's on the books. What else do we have here? I think that's so.
Mr. Chair, can I add that?
Yes.
That in number 6, where it talks about deliveries, you should add in trash removal, because that goes along with the access to the handicap parking space.
Absolutely.
And
That's already in there. Sorry, I didn't do it verbatim so that it would
okay,
fit on the
fine.
page, but yeah, that's okay.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Kemet.
Okay. All right. So last thing, we need to decide there was a request for no tents. How does the council feel about that?
I don't mean for this to be a major issue, Mr. Chairman. If it's
Yeah.
problematic, I don't want to create an issue.
Yeah. Why don't we say, no tents, okay?
I don't know. My feeling is you're going to have some shade out there. And if it's just misting,
Well, you can have them.
tent will make it more comfortable. So
Yeah, well, they can have umbrellas over the
Yeah.
tables for shade.
I think the no tent thing sounds a little overly restrictive too. There may be a situation, they mentioned the wedding before. I don't know if there's a way to work around that, but I hate to say no tents forever. It's just, I agree with Counselor Downs.
Mr. Temple, if they were to use the parking area and that area for a special event of a kind, wouldn't they have to come and get some kind of temporary permit from the city if it was outside the norm?
I'm not sure that they would. That's something I'd have to look into. I don't know if anybody in planning knows the answer to that.
Mr.
think
Temple.
There is a
I-
tent permit.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think, Jonah, because it would be an extension of premises. Right now, the liquor would be served within the Jersey barriers. I think if we go beyond that, I think we need a one-day license from the licensing board to do something like that.
Yeah, so I guess we could draft the order to say no tents unless you have that permit.
Why
or
don't we do
license.
that? Let's do it that way. We have found a solution. Okay? All right. Thank you. Anything else here, people? We good? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, we're
Yes.
adding a condition regarding the hours of operation of the patio to close at 9
Yes.
outside and no tents unless there is permission or permitted by the city.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody, that is the council order. Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Bowman,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
and Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
That passes 8-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
All right, good luck. Have a good one. The next item is 122-23. Paul Wong requests to further increase nonconforming FAR to allow an accessory building with a footprint exceeding 700 square feet and for a dormer within 3 feet of the intersecting wall at 20 Norwood Ave. Mr. Gleba. Mr. Gleba, you go first.
Okay. All right.
We go to planning first because we don't want to be redundant, so you can fill in some gaps because planning needs to not leave any stone unturned. So we have flipped this in the past year and it's been working very well, just to let you know. Mr. Walter, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Gleba.
All right, so as was mentioned, this is a special permit request to further extend non-conforming FAR, allow an oversized detached accessory apartment, and to allow a dormer within 3 feet of the intersection of the roof and the main building wall. Relief that's needed is as shown. Again, to further extend the non-conforming FAR, that would be from 0.38 to 0.54, where 0.36 is the maximum allowed by right. And that would add about 2,000 square feet to the property, bringing it up to about 6,300 square feet. To allow an oversized detached accessory apartment, which would be about 1,488 square feet, just below the maximum 1,500 square feet allowable by special permit. And again, to allow a dormer within 3 feet. This is on the accessory structure, 3 feet of the intersection of the roof and the main building wall. The criteria to consider for the council is as shown, whether this site is an appropriate location for the proposed structures. And I should note that there's 2 things going on. An accessory structure is being built in the rear, and there's a small addition being built onto the principal structure for a garage. We'll get into that more later. So again, whether this is an appropriate location for that bump up in the FAR, the oversized detached accessory apartment, and that dormer. Whether the proposed structures as designed, including those attributes, will or will not adversely affect the neighborhood, whether there would be a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, and whether access to the site is appropriate. The other criteria, so those are the special permit criteria. The other criteria, again, the bump up in FAR, whether the expanded structures with that FAR would be consistent with and not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood. And when it comes to extending the nonconformity, whether again that increase in FAR would be substantially more detrimental than the existing nonconforming structures to the neighborhood. Here we see the site in blue on the east side of Norwood Ave. Sacred Heart Church is kind of to the rear left of the site. Center Street is to the east, and the lake to the west. Here we have the site plan, which shows both the existing and proposed conditions. We have the 2 red circles or ovals here showing the first one. Hopefully you can see my pointer. This is where the proposed garage addition to the principal house would be. It's kind of an L-shaped addition with garage and the garage doors facing upward on this plan, which is the left side boundary. The proposed accessory structure, again, is mostly within that red oval. It extends a bit beyond it on the upper left here, so we can see how big that is. Outlined in blue is the existing garage, which would be taken down for this project, and the new building would really occupy most of that space plus. Here's another look at the site plan, perhaps a little simpler. The drawing is kind of turned here 180 degrees with Norwood now on the right-hand side. We can see the existing home, the attached garage proposed at that location, and the detached accessory structure shown here as well. That structure includes, again, a single car garage and a 1.5 story accessory apartment. Here are the proposed elevations for the addition to the principal house. The larger drawing on the left-hand side is the view, again, from the left side property line, showing the proposed garage. Norwood would be on the right of that drawing. And the smaller drawing on the right-hand side would be the view of that garage pretty much from the Norwood side. For the proposed accessory structure, these are these drawings, the west elevation on the lower left-hand side, is in effect the front, which would face northward. The east elevation would be to the rear. That's where you see the proposed dormer. It's kind of circled here in green, and you see how it goes all the way to the wall of the floor below, needing relief for that. And the two other elevations on the two other sides. We have one photo to show. This is from Norwood. This is pretty much the only view you can get from the public way of where it would be built. We see the principal structure on the right side. Where my pointer is, that would bump out to provide space for the proposed detached garage. And then the far left back of the property, you can see the existing garage, which would be taken down and become the site of the larger accessory structure. That's all we have for now, and hopefully can answer any questions the committee might have.
Great, thank you very much. And for the petitioner, Mr. Walter?
Yes, my name is Jay Walter. I'm representing the partitioners who are Paul and Carolyn Wong here today, 35-year residents of Newton who brought up 2 children here. They would like to stay on the property and age in place. May I share my screen?
Is the microphone on?
Oh.
Yes, you are the petitioner, so you may share your screen.
Right. So I need not go through these slides and replicate what's been shown by the planning department. Okay.
Yeah, just lean in a little bit, and you don't have to be redundant. You can fill in the gaps.
Okay. So I have a little better pictures of the site. The picture in the middle is of the residents from the street from Norwood. It's a late 19th century home, beautifully trimmed and nicely taken care of. You can see on the left the garage that we're talking about taking down. That's from the street. And the photograph on the right is the back of the house, existing house. I need not go through the plans. I just want to point out the west elevation, the one on the bottom, is what will be facing the street. There's the garage and the entry to the accessory apartment, and a loggia, which mimics the porch on the 3rd floor of the existing house. So most of the mass of the accessory apartment to the right will not be seen because it's behind the existing house. And then on the east elevation, you see where the dormer stacks over the edge of the existing house. That's what we're asking relief for. One reason for that is that you'll note on the survey, the property actually juts in, and we had to compensate and adjust the plans to accommodate that and still stay within the setbacks. And this is you've already seen this. This is a 3D model. It shows how the garage and the entry of the accessory apartment is what will be seen from the street. The tree in front of the garage is something that the clients were very keen on saving and will remain, and that will obscure much of the garage. So from the street, I think the impact of the project is really mitigated. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, you can stop sharing your screen, and we can go back to the full. There we go. And we can now take comments from the public. Anybody who wishes to speak who's here, come on up and come to the microphone. About 6 inches away from the microphone. Make sure it's on.
Thank you.
Name and address.
I'm John Harrington, and my wife is Jan Schifrin. We reside at 45 Crescent Avenue in Newton Center, just around the corner from Paul and Carolyn Wong. Jan and I support the Wong's petition to permit construction of an ancillary dwelling unit, or ADU, on their property for the following reasons. Firstly, as the committee is aware, Eastern Massachusetts currently suffers from a considerable housing shortage, and real estate in Newton in particular has become quite expensive, particularly when real estate taxes are considered in total ownership costs. An ADU is one means whereby seniors can remain in the communities they call home in the face of these rising prices. Secondly, to help overcome the area's housing shortage and in order to reduce the environmental impact of transportation, the Commonwealth recently enacted a law requiring towns with certain public transportation facilities to amend their zoning systems to permit increased housing density near such facilities. The Wong's home is located only a few blocks walk from the Newton Center station of the MBTA. While the new law is not directly applicable to the Wong's home, nonetheless, permitting them to construct an ADU would further the state's general goal of increasing housing density near public transportation facilities. Finally, I serve on the board of an area aging services access point and understand the importance of senior citizens being able to age in place in their communities. My wife, Jan, a physician, likewise appreciates the benefits of seniors being able to live in their communities with their families nearby. Permitting the Wongs to construct an ADU would further the goal of enabling seniors to remain in their community for the long haul. For all the foregoing reasons, Jan and I urge the committee to approve the Wong's petition to build an ADU on their property. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your comments, and very well done for a support of what an ADU is. Very impressive. Thank you for that.
Thanks much.
All right. Anybody else from the public who wishes to speak? Anybody from the public at home on Zoom, raise your hand. I'll call on you. I don't see anybody else in the chamber. Nobody there. We can take it into the council. Councilor Bowman.
Thank you very much. So I don't have to explain to people on this committee or clearly in the room why ADUs are a very good land use property, thanks to one of our neighbors. This is my ward, Ward 6, and I'm very happy with the plans and the way it's laid out. I do have a few questions. One is, I think the planning memo mentioned something about the potential for screening at the back side of the property. I think we heard that. So I don't know if the petitioner would like to talk about any screening that they might consider between the back of on the back property. And the second is, I am interested in, I think we understand that this is going to be all electric, and they're going to be using heat pumps, and what the plan is as far as where the this, I don't know what I should know the term because I've just installed these in my house, but the condensers on the outside, where the plan is for those. So if those two questions could be answered, that would be great, but I am very supportive of this project.
Okay. Mr. Walter, those two questions?
Yes. There's already a fence that runs across the back of the property, and that will remain. As far as the heat pumps, they will be put beside the garage. As you know, that they're allowed in the sideline setback, and the house is, adjacent house is considerably farther enough away. I don't think it'll disturb them.
Use your microphone, please.
It'll be on the north side, yes.
It would be on the north side. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I like the design of this project. I like the fact that the ADU is cleverly hidden, where you're basically going to see this new garage where the old garage was. I like the design. Councilor Laredo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no problem with an ADU being here, and certainly while large, it's built within the limits of what we allow for special permits. And I do think the location is appropriate, particularly as it abuts the church parking lot in the rear. But I'm looking at Mr. Gleba's memo, and He does note that the question of why there's non-compliant dormer dimensions, what the rationale is for that, since this is brand new construction. I'd like to get a response from Mr. Walter about that.
The design of the dormer?
Mr. Gleba raised in his memo the question of, given that this is new construction, why couldn't it have been built? Why could it have not been built in conformity if there's a valid architectural reason why it should be different? That's fine, but I want to hear that.
Yes, well, as I pointed out on the site plan, we didn't realize that there was a jog in the property line which required the building to be set back, so it wasn't a clean outside corner. We had to jog the building. And that dormer requirement would be allowed in any residence in the city. There's just an exception for accessory buildings.
Okay, so if it wasn't an accessory, that would be allowed by design. And
Could I hear Mr. Gleber's response to that, please, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Gleba?
I think the point being it's new construction, so it could just be made smaller to not need the believe. It's like it's it is your choice to have it the size or width it is. And just you're not constrained by an existing structure. That's why we raised that question.
Okay, I guess it comes down to it's an ask, and we can say no or approve anything. And is this dormer being a little larger than typical egregious and an issue to anybody? Mr. Walter?
I'd like to point out that the dormer is in the back. It's not seen, and the mass of the building is such that it still reads as a 1.5-story building. I think the intent of that bylaw is to prevent 1.5-story buildings from looking like 2-story buildings because of the way the dormer is attached to the building, and I don't think that that's an issue with this particular.
Okay, and that dormer doesn't take the square footage over the line. It's all part of the design. Councilor Bowman?
Can I
Sure,
just
sorry.
respond, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Councilor Rado. Sorry, I should finish
Yeah,
with you.
what I was going to say is that explanation makes sense to me. I don't think we ought to hold up this project over that kind of what I view as minor dimensional control. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with that, Councilor Laredo. Councilor Bowman?
I was just going to point out that the dormer also doesn't run the entire length of the back. It's just over what I think is the bedroom area. So it's about 1/3 of the roof anyway.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with some of the comments made about how much I like the way the design of the part that's visible from Norwood Ave is really charming and fits in so well with the house. It is, however, a pretty big addition in terms of FAR relief. It's not a small ADU. It's above the square footage or percentage that we normally allow. So I don't know if it had been smaller, would there have been another way of handling this dormer issue? With as I read it, the habitable space in this ADU is 1,488 square feet, which is not a tiny accessory apartment. On the other hand, I wouldn't hold it up for any of these reasons either. I think it's a very appropriate location for this kind of use, and to have an ADU and to have additional units. I have one question, Mr. Walter. Do you have to apply for a demolition delay of the garage through the Historic Commission?
We do, and we have applied for that. And I would imagine your approval would be pending, contingent upon approval from them.
Yeah. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? We usually like to have heard from them first. That eases the way for us. And I know, looking at this home, and actually even at, it's a charming garage, that they may have some issue with it, but that's not our concern. I just wondered if you had already gone there and we didn't have the results of that
Yeah,
yet.
we've already applied, and I know that they're looking at it. It's a 1930s garage. It's not vintage with the.
As you know, anything over 50 years comes under their purview, which is something some of us tried to change a couple of years ago. But anyway, I plan to vote for this. I just wanted to point out that, you know, it is pretty big and the FAR is quite a lot more than is allowed. Though I think there are special permits because there are reasons for us to consider making exceptions like this. So I'll be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, Councillor Kelly. Every single one of these stands on its own. And if there wasn't a church parking lot in the back, if there wasn't support from multiple neighbors, there are things that build this picture where, you know, when people say be consistent, and we may have another one in the future with an ADU this size that we turn down. Everyone has its own special characteristics. Councillor Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to voice my support for this project. It's a lovely design and fits right into the neighborhood. So I just wanted to say support this. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It looks like we are finished here. Councillor Danberg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would also like to say that I support this. I think that it's a real plus in the neighborhood and very close to the T. The design of it, is lovely when you look at the vista from the street. The majority, and I think this has already been said, the majority of the massing of the project is hidden in the back of the behind the house. And I am very much in support of this.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, now refresh my memory. Who made a motion to close the public hearing? Councillor Bowman?
I move to close the public hearing and move approval.
Thank you very much. A motion to close the public hearing by Councillor Bowman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. We have a motion to approve. Can we take a look at a council order?
Findings include the special permit findings, that it's an appropriate location for this, given the mixed-use character of the neighborhood, which features similarly scaled and designed dwellings and larger institutional and commercial structures. That as designed, it will not adversely affect the neighborhood, as the dwelling has limited visibility from nearby properties and public rights of way. No nuisance or serious hazards, and access to the site is appropriate. The other two findings, the other criteria, that the structure, in a sense, as designed with the FAR of 0.54, is consistent with and not in derogation of others in the neighborhood. Again, given the mixed-use character of the neighborhood, which features similarly scaled and designed dwellings and larger institutional and commercial structures. And then for the extension of the non-conforming FAR, it will now be substantially more detrimental, again, for similar reasons, having to do with the neighborhood and nearby structures, and the dwelling will have limited visibility from nearby properties and public rights of way. And the conditions as shown, including the pest control and O&M conditions.
Excellent. Thank you. Everybody good? All right. Please call the roll.
Councillor Kelly.
Aye.
Councillor Greenberg.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Markowitz.
Aye.
Councillor Downs.
Aye.
Councillor Bowman.
Aye.
Councillor Laredo.
Aye.
And Councillor Lipoff.
Aye.
That passes 8-0.
Great, thank you. Good luck with your project. Okay. Last item of the night, 111-23, Adeline Elmias. Request to allow 4 single-family attached dwellings in 2 buildings to waive certain dimensional requirements and 1 parking stall at 77 Hartford Street. Can we hear from planning first, please?
Yes, just let me share my screen here. Okay, great. So this is petition 11123 at 77 Hartford Street. In 1992, a special permit was approved, which allowed the creation of a detached accessory apartment in the rear carriage house on this site. The petitioner is seeking to construct an additional unit within the attic of the front dwelling, the kind of main house as it reads from the street, and convert the detached accessory apartment into a separate dwelling unit. This would result in 4 single-family attached dwellings in 2 separate structures on the lot. So no new built area would be added, but the use change will change the relief required because there's different dimensional standards that apply now that the units will be single-family attached. So the project requires relief to allow single-family dwellings to waive 1 parking stall, reduced lot area per unit, reduce front and side and rear setback to exceed 36 feet and 3 stories in height, and to allow a driveway within 10 feet of the side lot line and parking within 20 feet of the side lot line. In reviewing this request, the council should consider whether the specific site is an appropriate location for the proposed 4 attached dwellings in 2 separate buildings that are 36 feet tall and 3 stories in height, with all of the relief in the previous slide. If the proposed project as designed will not adversely affect the neighborhood, if there will not be a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, and if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. The property is located in the MR1 district at the intersection of Boylston and Hartford Street in Newton Highlands. The property abuts multifamily residences to either side on Hartford Street, a multifamily residence and single-family dwelling to the north, and an auto repair shop across Boylston Street. The neighborhood has a mix of single and multifamily residences, and the area south of Boylston Street has a mix of commercial uses as well. The zoning in this area is primarily residential, including SR and MR districts to the north, and a more diverse mix of business, mixed use, and open space to the south. This is the site plan for what's there now and what is proposed. It's a 15,950 square foot lot, which is improved with 2 structures. At the front of the lot, closer to Hartford Street, is a 3-story 2-family dwelling, which was built circa 1890. And behind that is a detached carriage house. The site is accessed by a single curb cut on Hartford Street with a surface concrete parking area behind that principal building. There are 5 parking stalls to the side of the carriage house and 2 stalls in front of the carriage house at the rear for a total of 7 parking stalls. The main building has a non-conforming front setback of 14.25 feet and non-conforming side setbacks of 15 feet and 21 feet where 25 is required. The carriage house has a non-conforming rear setback of 3 feet where 25 feet is required in the course of converting to single-family attached dwellings. Because the setbacks that apply to detached accessory apartments are not the same to those that apply to the single-family attached, the side setback that is now conforming at 11.7 feet now requires relief. So the main dwelling also has a non-conforming height of 36.7 feet, where 36 feet is the max allowed by right. And it's 3 stories tall, where up to 2.5 stories are allowed by right. So both of those need relief. And much of this is just by nature of the fact that the buildings are staying the same. They're not adding any FAR, they're not adding any built area, but it's changing from one use to another. So the rules that apply have changed in many fronts. 4 units are proposed on the lot, which is 15,950 square feet. So that results in a lot area per unit of just under 4,000 square feet, where about 8,000 square feet currently exists and 4,000 square feet is required. So it's just under that 4,000 square feet, but that does require relief. No changes are proposed to the parking configuration or the amount of paving on site. The existing parking is within 2.5 feet of the western lot line, and the driveway is within 5.5 feet of the eastern lot line. So that requires relief. And with 4 residential units proposed on the site, 8 parking stalls are required. There are 7 stalls on site at the rear of the property, so a waiver of 1 stall is required. So this is the floor plans for the carriage house. The first floor is on the left, the second is on the right. It is currently approved as 1 unit and it's going to remain 1 residential unit, but the habitable space is going to be increasing. So currently the habitable space is limited to the second floor, which is 550 square feet. With the conversion of the storage on the first floor, the unit size of the carriage house apartment would increase to 805 square feet in total. And this is the proposed new unit. So with the addition of this unit, there would be 4 units on the site in total. This would be in the attic of the existing building on the 3rd floor. And that unit would be 667 square feet in total. The first and second floor will remain the same. Overall, the department is not concerned with the project as proposed. The site is in MR1, so some modest increase in housing seems appropriate to the department. And at under 700 square feet, the new unit will be small and add a modest amount of housing without any associated new construction, because the changes will be limited to the envelope of the existing building. And that's all I have for now.
Excellent, nice presentation, Ms. Kemet. Do we have somebody here for the petitioner or the petitioner? Good evening. You got to talk into the microphone?
Hi, good
Hi.
evening. My name is Eldian Elmias. I'm here to speak on behalf of my mom, Adeline Elmias. We've lived in Newton for over 30 years. We love Newton Highlands specifically. I know everybody has their specific neighborhood. And, you know, my mom was a first-time homeowner when she came to this particular property. And she's been operating it as a 3-family up until 1993, when the accessory apartment in the back became an addition to what she was renting. She learned about a year and a half ago that the property was never zoned for all of those rental units. And this is what she's attempting to rectify right now. We're actually not building anything, not tearing down anything. We might paint something, but no major change is going to be done. We actually we're very close to our neighbors, and one of our neighbors came to us when she saw the sign and she said, "Oh my gosh, are you turning this into condos?" We were like, "No, never, like, that's not the purpose of this." And so the concern for our neighbors is that we're attempting to create these individual units so that we can then sell them off and I guess go live in the Bahamas. We love Newton. My mom retired in Newton. She's gonna stay in Newton until she can't stay in Newton anymore. Her kids have grown up. We refuse to leave. My brother's currently trying to take over an apartment and we're just waiting for all of this to finish. So this is very much a family property. Even our renters, we had a renter until this incident for 25 years. Our renters become our family. And like I said, we fall in love with the community. You know, I don't know how many of you know, but Newton Highlands Park, you know, in the summertime, every Friday night they have a musical performance. We can hear that from our porch. So we definitely want you to know that we value the community. We're just attempting to kind of make all of this right.
Excellent, thank you very much. All right, we have a full look at this. We will go to the neighborhood now, to the public for comment. I see Meredith Warshaw.
I've lived next to Ms. Elmias for 27 years now, and she's a wonderful neighbor. this it seems like a perfectly reasonable, I mean, it's a good use. We're walking distance to the T, easy walking distance. Our house is 2 units. The house across the street is under construction, having 2 units added to it to make it 3 townhouses. So it's perfectly in character. And I wholeheartedly support it and hope to have Adeline as a neighbor for a very long time.
Thank you very much. Counselor, I don't see anybody else from the public. Counselor Bowman.
Thank you very much. This is in my ward. I think this is a perfect project. I love to hear when people move to Newton and want to stay forever. These are great, great things about Newton. And so this is in my ward. So assuming people are supportive, I'd be happy to move approval, close the public hearing, move approval when possible.
Absolutely. This is really approving what is there. Nothing adding. I can't see any reason not to support this. Counselor Danberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to say that this is in my ward. I think that this is another perfect example, as was the project before this, of exactly what we're trying to achieve in our areas that are close to the T and close to villages. I think that it's very, it's a very good example of what we're attempting to create in our neighborhoods, to densify the neighborhoods without changing the character of the buildings in them. So I would wholeheartedly support this project.
Thank you, Counselor Danberg. I agree. We're trying to find units, trying to create more units within the same footprint. This fits the bill. Counselor Laredo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's laudable that we're not changing the exterior of these units. I do want to understand a little bit more of the history here, however. Has this been operated as a 3-family building plus the accessory apartment? Is that what's been going on?
I think that's what it is, correct?
So, yes.
Yes.
Let's let the petitioner respond if we could.
She said yes. I was just
Okay.
saying that as well, just in case anybody couldn't hear her through her mask.
So I understand that. Why can't the accessory unit remain an accessory unit?
I
Is
can
there
answer that.
Go
They
ahead.
need the accessory units are only allowed in association with 1 and 2 family dwellings. So in order to legalize all 4 units, it would fall under single family attached most to allow it under the zone.
That's the only reason we have to change it from an accessory unit to a detached, I'm sorry, 4 attached or 4 units. Is that correct, Ms. Wick?
Yes, because the applicant wouldn't be able to have the accessory unit with the 3-family dwelling or multifamily.
And is there, okay, I think I understand that. And likewise, you could not make the attic apartment accessory either for the same reason?
That's correct.
Okay. And the changes that are going on in the accessory unit, they're just to somewhat expand that unit?
Yes, it's just,
No, go ahead, Kat.
yeah, it's the space inside is remaining the same, just some area that was previously designated as storage will now be living area.
All right, that answers my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Downs.
So I'm going to associate myself with Counselor Danberg and Counselor Bowman's comments. I think that's perfectly appropriate. I'm just curious I think a number of us were at the meeting last night, and we were talking about MRT as a zone. And I believe this would sit in that zone. This is what we're talking about doing by right. Am I correct?
I think that's for another time.
But at any rate,
Yes,
I'm,
we can
I'm
talk
willing
about
to
that. Yeah, we can talk about that offline. Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion to close the public hearing by Counselor, was it Bowman? Counselor Bowman. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The public hearing is closed. We have a motion to approve by Counselor Bowman. Can we take a look at a council order, Ms. Kemet?
Yes. So for findings, we have one, the specific site in MR1 is an appropriate location for 4 attached dwellings in 2 separate buildings that are 36 feet tall and 3 stories in height, with reduced lot area per unit, reduced front setback, reduced side setback, reduced rear setback, with 1 parking stall waived and a driveway within 10 feet of the side lot line, and parking within 20 feet of the side lot line, because there is a diverse mix of residential building sizes and configurations in the area. 2, the project as proposed will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the changes proposed are limited to the existing building envelopes. 3, the proposed project will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because all parking will be contained on the site and the curb cut will not be altered. And 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. For proposed conditions, standard plan referencing and standard conditions, and that it must comply with the city's accessory apartment and short-term rental ordinances. I think actually we probably wouldn't need to include accessory apartment. Sorry about that.
All right. We good? All right, we have a motion to approve. Please call the roll.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Bowman,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
and Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
That passes 8-0.
Great, thank you. That concludes our business, everybody. Good luck with your project. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Good, everybody.